Well, I was born Wilma Alticer, Wilma Carter, and I married a sergeant who, his name was Altizer, Altizer, Altizer. And that's the name that I keep today. And what else did you want to know?
Where were you born? When you born?
I was born in, actually, not in a hospital, but in Buckner, Buckner, Illinois. And it was a small town, about 1,400 or something like that. And it's not even on the map anymore. And I still have, I did have the last atlas that we were on the map. And now it is a village. It's not even on the map.
No.
It's about 90 miles across the river from St. Louis, Missouri, way down south. It has nothing to do with Chicago. I've only been to Chicago, I think, twice in my life. If we had business or anything, we usually went to St. Louis.
I see. When you born?
December 13th, 1927. I'm 85.
Wow. You look young.
Well, thank you.
What were you doing when the Korean War broke out?
I was at Langley Field, Virginia, and I did not know at the time that it was, and nobody else knew that it was this big secret base and all that at that time. You can't put this in, but my husband and I didn't have when we married, we were young, and we didn't have a place to go. We used to make love under the wind tunnel. And we didn't even know what it was. It was so funny. It was years before I really found out what that was. And that was all really secret stuff. I didn't know anything about it. I just worked in, at that time I was just a corporal, and that's all I ever was. Because
you joined the Army?
No, I joined the...
Air Force?
Yeah.
When did you join the Air Force?
In 1949, I think.
Why?
I wanted to get away from home.
Huh?
I wanted to get away from home. Isn't that horrible?
Mm-hmm.
You will cut a lot of that down, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I was a baby of the family, the only one that my parents had, and my dad had 5 children. And there was always friction. And when everybody else was out of the house, my mom and dad wanted to keep me at home.
Mm.
I was the only one there, and I could stay and take care of Mama, and all this kind of stuff, which she didn't need me care. She took care of me, always took care of me, and all that kind of stuff. But that was why, and I was there 4 or 5 years, about 4 years, I guess, after I was out of high school. And I just wanted to get away without hurting them, and that's the only way. They didn't want me to go to school or anything like that.
So you volunteered to join the Air Force. And where did you...
No, let me stop that. I didn't volunteer. I was really dumb when I went. They just did the recruiting, and when they take everybody in and and they gave us all exams and everything. They kept holding up my paper. I thought they were making fun of me.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, at one time they were going to put me in officers training, but I was not in that long, whatever. But the thing was, there was a little pocket in southern Illinois that I know it was people who married in our family said that when they came there, they couldn't have said there was 4 or 5 miles away, people would still have wagons and stuff like that, And my dad was a coal miner, and the explanation was not that I was that bright, but that area was so separated from the rest of the modern, so on and so forth, that I knew I passed that. I answered almost all the questions. The thing was, there was nothing to do around there, and I read everything in the library. I was not trying to educate myself because I liked to, I had to do something, and I liked to read. And I guess they thought I was smarter than I was.
So that's why you joined the Air Force?
Yes, it was the only way. I talked it over with my parents, and Dad would not sign any papers or anything until I was 21. After I reached 21, and I went to him and I said, Dad, I said, I don't want to disappoint you or Mother, and I will stay here as long as you absolutely say I'm going to, but I'm telling you I don't want to, and I think you're doing a disservice to making me feel guilty and all this kind of stuff. And about 2 months later, he came to me and said, do what you want.
Good. So where did you serve in the Air Force? Right after you joined the Air Force, where did you go?
Well, I went to Lackland, of course, like everybody else, and took the training there, and then I went straight to Virginia, Lackland Air Force. But that's the only actual base as a worker that I ever worked in.
What was your specialty?
It's so funny. At that time, my brother had been in the service and was killed. He was a pilot.
Could you speak up a little?
Yeah, no, I'm back to why I'm saying this. My father would get these checks, insurance checks, and they had these punches on them. Punch cards. Cards. We didn't know what that was. I mean, we couldn't understand why these punch. Well, I worked in the office there, and they sent me to training in Denver, Colorado, to learn. Can I check all this before you send? Because I'm telling you a lot of personal stuff that molded, not printed off. But they sent us to Denver, Colorado, and they don't have that base there. I don't even remember what it was, come to think of it. But in Denver, Colorado, I went to school there for 3 months. Strangely enough, they had a table about half that size this way. I mean, and all the way along the long room. The officers were on one side, and we were on the other. And this table-like thing, kind of I don't know what you would call it, big dish of a thing, had wires in it. And so they taught us both. Officers taught the officers and enlisted people taught us, but we would ask each other across if we didn't know something. And we took the same training that they took, and I didn't know it at the time, but the fellow across there that asked the most questions of us was the officer I worked for when I went to Virginia. All we called it then was IBM training. We did, and it was the beginning, the computers. We started out with the smaller ones, and then it got huge. In fact, I worked in
the mainframe.
I don't know anything about computers anymore. I mean, I just forgot it.
So your specialty was computer communication?
Yeah, and delegates. Actually, it was as advanced as they had it then, but there was not much advancement. And then when I got jumping forward after I got out of the service, at one time I worked in Peoria, Illinois, which is called up, where that is, towards Chicago. And I went back to, actually you couldn't hire women then at that time at my job because you had to carry those huge trays, and they thought that was unhealthy. And so it was against the law, in fact. You couldn't hire them. So I was at a loss because, what was I going to do? Because they didn't have the big machines to work on. And they hired me as a key punch operator because I knew all this other stuff. I knew how to, and that was a help to them. And I started out as a key punch operator there, and actually that's all I ever did, although I was a lead girl and everything over a bunch of key punch operators and stuff like that. But I just made the best of what I could get, what I wanted.
Have you been to Korea?
Never.
You never went?
I would, yeah.
No. Why are you Korean War veteran now?
Why am I?
Yeah.
Why? Well,
please explain the audience, because I know, but...
frankly, we don't much even think about that. I was very surprised when I could come here because I didn't even know it was anything that could get in. But it was the era. It wasn't where you were. Is that a good way to explain it?
Yeah.
If you were in a certain time. In fact, I was only in a very, very short time. And I said, oh, but I couldn't ask for, when we were filling up. I can't ask for that because I wasn't in long enough. It was just, it was over a cusp, really. And they looked at me and grinned and says, oh, yes, you can. We go by the time you're in.
When did you discharge from the Air Force?
Well, that also has to do with more or less the Korean War because I was pregnant and going to have a baby anyway, and my husband had been transferred up to I believe it was, is there a Stewart Air Force Base? This has been centuries, and we've not been together for centuries. I think it was Stewart Air Force Base in New York, if I'm not mistaken. And he had been transferred there, and we tried 3 times. Sergeants can do anything. They can do what lieutenants can't do and what can't do and what privates can't do, but a good sergeant can do anything. Mm-hmm. And they got me transferred to New York and him transferred back to Virginia. We kept crossing in the mails about 5 times. And he called me once and he said, you can't put this in there. He said, sit still. And so I said, well, he said, this is driving us crazy. So he said, I'm coming back. I can't get back there now because I put so many through. But do you want to come up here and live? And I said, no, not particularly. I loved it, where we were. And he says, you're pregnant anyway, and you're not going to be able to stay in very long. So he says, I can get you out. So he went to his officer or something, and they let me.
When was it?
See, I was in 1949 and 50. Actually, it looks like on paper, it looks like longer than it was. I think it was 1951, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. But I was in the full year in between, if you know what I mean, just cusp on both of them. And then I followed him to Okinawa after that.
At the time that you joined the Air Force, it wasn't usually women's things to do, right?
No.
How people perceived it, and how were you treated, and could you tell me about that?
Well, this is one reason. My father, first off, didn't want me to go to college because the other children had not got to go. I could see his point of view, but he didn't even want me to work there. But anyway, I ask a little bit of that question so I can get to your perception.
I mean, the women were not really in the army or air force, not in the military, and it was woman's job to do, right? Generally regarded.
It was more or less the only way I could get away from home. It literally was. They didn't want me to go to school, and they wanted me to marry someone locally around there, which I didn't want to do. And
how military treat you?
Wonderful.
Were there any inequality or unfair treatment for women?
No, not at all. At least I didn't receive it.
What do you think about you being a Korean War veteran but never been in Korea?
Well, heavens, I've thought about that many times. In fact, I never mentioned that I'm a Korean War veteran because I didn't feel really like I was. I mean, I was working here, and of course, boy, they put us through hell for sure. But still, you weren't really doing, because at that time, they did treat the women like they were women. Not now. You go in and you go wherever whatever. But that was not our case at that time. We stayed behind the lines.
Do you know where Korea is? Have you heard about Korea, or do you know anything about Korea?
I don't. I just know that there's a North and South Korea, and no, I don't look at maps anymore, of course. And it's right on the cusp, I guess, of China, and I know. I read until I came here, I read everything in the paper, and I listened to them. I don't do that anymore because I don't take a paper, but I do watch all the news in the different states. In fact, I'm a news junkie. I have one of the stations on all day long.
Why was Korean War forgotten?
I didn't forget it, but I don't know what an official name. It was sort of was it fought uselessly, or nobody got anything out? I don't know. I never felt it was it hurt too many people. I mean, from most of our point of view. Oh, anyway, I don't know. I don't know.
Anything you want to mention about being yourself as Korean War veterans and about the Korean War?
No. At that time, I'm afraid maybe we certainly took it seriously, but we lost my brother, and I'm afraid that was the most on our mind.
All right. Thank you very much for coming for the interview.